Welcome to Ageless. I'm your host, Amanda Lamb. This is a podcast for women, about women, featuring women. It's about what happens when we turn 50 and our culture quietly deems us irrelevant. But we are not our mothers. There's a new generation of 50-plus women who are redefining what it means to thrive in the second half of our lives. Whether you're still raising children, working, caring for aging parents, or just looking for the next chapter, I strongly believe that my guests will inspire you because they inspire me. On today's show, my guest is my friend and colleague, Miriam K. Melvin, or Mimi, as a lot of us have come to know her over the years. Welcome to the program, Mimi.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to give everybody a little bit of information about your background first. You are a local television news producer of 25 years whose life happened in North Carolina when you were making other plans. She's now married and raising two young sons that she had in her mid to late 30s. She works the early morning shift so she can be home with her family in the afternoon and evenings. And one of the major things, and I mean major things, that keeps her going, and I mean going, is exercise, specifically running. And boy, can she run. I have run with her, so I can attest to this firsthand. And thank you for being patient with me when we run, Mimi. I appreciate it. So let's talk about first how you got into the crazy TV news business and why you ended up staying.
Well, first of all, thank you once again for inviting me. And, TV has always been something that was interesting to me because I thought, they tell great stories and can share what's going on in the community. And even as a kid, I was a nerd. So I would need to stay up to watch the news. And I'm from Chicago, so our late news is at 10. And I would be under the dining room table because there was a straight shot at the floor model television. Yeah, you had to be a person of a certain age.
Oh yeah,
to know
with it had the big back on it.
Oh
yeah,
yes, most definitely. And I just thought that it was amazing, watching these people day in and day out tell these stories. Fast forward a little bit, I enjoyed speaking and writing. I had my own advice column in high school.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You were ahead of the curve.
Oh, yeah. But don't worry. I had, there was a counselor who had to approve everything that I told the students. But it was really funny because in my senior year, once I was getting ready to graduate, I revealed that I was Ask Miss K.
Oh, and then they found out. They didn't know who you were. It was a secret.
No one knew. It was so hilarious. So, it was at that time that I thought, I enjoy interacting with people, sharing, helping, and telling stories. So, moving on into college, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'll go into the business aspect. Nope. I am more creative than I am one of those do your numbers. Most communications majors, ask us something about math. We don't really want to do that.
Right. So you wanted to tell stories. You wanted to write.
I wanted to write. I wanted to tell stories. And I really just wanted to make an impact. So, that's basically how it all started. And I decided to stay because I still felt that there was work for me to do.
Absolutely. And tell us how much news do you produce a day?
Well, I produce a 1-hour newscast and, people think, oh, okay, well, you have a lot of time. It's really not a lot of time because you have to get your local news, your national news, and world news events especially. So, the time before you know it, it has ticked on by.
And you come in really early to do that, correct?
I do. I wake up at 3:30 in the morning. I have my devotional time, get, dressed, and I'm out of the door by 4:30 because I must be at work, logged on by 5 a.m.
And you're rolling at that point because you've got to get ready for that newscast. And that is, being someone who's been in the industry for 35 years, an hour is a very long time to produce. And especially when you're relying on a lot of other people that are just coming in at 8:30, 9, 9:30, 10, and they have to hit the ground running in order to make your show happen, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So you talked about making a difference, and I think that's really important, especially as we're talking to women 50 plus in the kind of the second half of their lives and the transitions that they're making. And you and I have talked off mic about how important it is for you at this point in your life to be making a difference. What does that mean to you? Is that mentoring? Is that helping shape the stories that we tell?
You hit the nail on the head. It definitely is mentoring because no one gets where they are on their own. So I feel that it is my duty to assist the next generation of young journalists and especially Black women. Because as I was coming up, I didn't really have that afforded to me. And, there are definitely people on air. But when you start talking about the producers or the news directors, you could really count them on one hand in the 90s and early 2000s.
And to
when
be
it came
honest,
in.
even now, if
It
you
is.
look at middle management in the news industry, there are more women than there used to be, but not as many women of color.
Exactly. And so when I talk about making a difference, what I'm really saying is making sure our voices are heard. And not just Black women, but of course, we'll start there because I know my community and I hear the concerns. And because I am also in the media, I have to, it's a very fine line that you're walking because you hear the complaints of how Black people are depicted. But then I also have to share, it is also our responsibility to tell the story. So I have to balance because I also know that there are so many positive stories out there. So that's where making the difference comes into play for me, is making sure that because we do have this huge responsibility, we can shape thought, we shape action because people act on what they know, what they feel, and what they think they know about a person. So, as one of the only Black women in middle management where we are, it is my responsibility to speak up.
Absolutely.
It's not always comfortable, but I know that it's necessary.
Understandably. And I know you also helped create the company's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board. Tell me what this group does and why is it so important to you?
It's been a long time coming. I have been in, media almost 25 years here in Raleigh. And when I first arrived, I cannot say that it was very welcoming. Now, no one outwardly called me out of my name, but it's the whispers. It's the reports. It is when you have your review and you're told that your tone isn't palatable, basically.
Wow.
Or
Interesting.
that you sound angry. And, I don't know how to make my voice rise 4 octaves to make someone else feel comfortable, but this is how I talk. And because I don't have a little squeaky voice and I don't sing song.
So it's like a lot of really subtle comments, if you will, that you were concerned about,
right.
and you wanted to make sure this wasn't occurring with other
people.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel welcome. I'll be very honest. I didn't feel welcome at a lot of the parties or the after hours events, and that's fine. But it gave me pause.
Right, and you want to help change that
and
culture.
I wanted to change the culture.
And it seems to be changing. I think it is, right?
Yes. Now, that's not the reason I wanted to be a part of the DEI committee at our job. It was primarily because, as I said, starting out one way, and I've been seeing subtle changes in our attitudes and even in our storytelling, and really considering the complete message. And it was just with all the, I would say officer involved, but we know that that's not the right way to say this. It's when an officer shoots and kills, especially an unarmed person, whether it's male, woman, Black or white. And but there were, as we all know, a larger number of young Black men being gunned down for, and I won't say trivial offenses, but in a lot of cases, it made us wonder, why didn't they live to see the next day?
And you wanted to be part of this conversation.
And I wanted to be part of the conversation, and I felt that my voice needed to be heard because, we all have a story to tell.
Absolutely. Let's shift gears for a minute to family, because I don't think we can talk as women our age about career without talking about family. It's a balancing act. It always has been. It always will be. I think our generation has the gift of fathers that are probably a lot more involved maybe than our fathers were, because it was a different time. It was a different culture. So you're in the middle. I mean, you are really, you've 3 sons, 2 of them are still at home that you're raising. Talk about that balancing act, because I know you have to go to work really early so that you can be involved later in the day and in the evening.
Indeed. So I will tell you this. I'm a child of the 70s, and my parents started their family immediately after high school. Now, we know the 60s were different.
Yeah.
and 4 kids later, before they were 25, they had all 4 of us and no college degree between the 2 of them. And I remember the day my parents sat us, when I say us, my oldest brother and myself, I was 12 and he was 15. And they said, listen, we love each and every one of you, but this is not the way to do things. Because my mother was working as a grocery checkout clerk. My father drove a delivery van, and my mother was also going to school for her nursing, for her RN, and my father was going to school to become an English professor.
And raising 4 children at the same time.
So, that's the reason why these days when kids say, it's too much, I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
I come from that. That was
idea.
that was my blueprint. But they were very honest. They said, we love each other and we love all of you, but we made life harder than it needed to be.
And they wanted you to have an education, and that's, of course, what you're instilling in your kids.
Exactly. And so when I didn't rush to get married. I was, living life, having a good time, moved here, single, young, and thinking I'm upwardly mobile. Things were going excellent. And boom.
You met your person.
I met my husband. God looks at your plans and he laughs.
Yeah.
Because I really thought I was on my way out the door. And, a house and, kids and, we got married. We met. Okay, so first we met. 8 months later, he proposed. 8 months later, we were married. And literally a year later, we had Joshua. And it was, a blessing, because here I was supposed to be the geriatric mom because I was 35 and pregnant, and they're like, oh, you got to watch this, you got to watch that.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I think they stamped on my folder at the doctor's office with my second child that I was of advanced maternal age. I was 36.
Yes, and I was 36 when I had Joshua, but the whole time I was exercising, still doing my step aerobics, because I love to exercise, and had him in 4 hours. Boom. Thank God it was quick. And then the second one, same thing. He didn't even want to wait. He
was ready to roll
in the ambulance. You remember the story. It was crazy. So, but here I am, and, I made a very conscious decision with both of them. I want to be present.
Sure.
And, yes, it meant, and this is a podcast for women. Of course, we welcome you men, but I was pumping at the job and storing milk and coming home dead tired. But, this bright-eyed baby is looking at me like, hey, mommy, it's playtime. And, I had to get that second wind because, I was doing all of those things and working so that I could, give them a better life. But in the midst of that, I wanted to be present and enjoy the moment. And so here I am, still working crazy shifts, 5 to 1, but it is what allows me to get in car line in the afternoon and, take my kids to their extracurricular sporting activities and band,
Help them with homework at night, have dinner.
We sit around the table every night. And we've been doing that since they were born. Because I want them to have that sense of family, to see what it's like. And I don't mean just to have traditional roles, because my husband does a lot, trust me.
Sure.
But I want them to see love. I want, and it's
and family,
and
family, what that looks
and
like.
what it looked like.
Well, it's interesting because you said you were still doing all that stuff with exercise. I think one of the things with new parenthood, especially when you are working a crazy job, is we can lose ourselves, right? It's really easy to lose ourselves. And I know you shared with me and feel as much as you're comfortable with, at one point you looked in the mirror and you were surprised by what you saw physically, that you hadn't been exercising as much and you'd had children. And you decided it was time for a change.
Most definitely. And I don't mind sharing the story because I think that we learn and we grow by learning from one another. So there may be a woman out there who doesn't see her 25, 35, or even 45-year-old self anymore. And it stunned me because after the second child, and most women know, you're doing fine when you have one. Once you get two, that's when you really get baptized.
Things go south.
Yeah. And, it really was important, again, as I said, being there for my children. So I was keeping them active in Gymboree and all these other extracurricular things for toddlers. And I neglected myself. And I knew that I was kind of getting out of shape, but, I thought, I'll bounce back. But one day I looked in the mirror and I saw this person whose hair was unkempt. Her nails were not done. She had a frumpy nightgown on, seriously. And,
just for the record, I have never seen you looking frumpy. Okay. Well, want to be clear here.
And that's the thing. It's like, we get so used to not necessarily putting on airs, but, this is the life. I'm used to wearing my 3-inch heels and, my beautiful dresses, and I couldn't zip anything. I was tucking and hiding. So a lot of people thought, you look fine. But I knew how I felt.
You didn't feel good about yourself.
I did not feel good about myself. And I will also say this. My husband never once talked about my weight or, you're looking a little, plump around the middle. Right. Never. He always told me how beautiful I was and how motherhood made me glow.
Good man.
And
Good man.
I'm so grateful for him. But I also knew the truth. And at that moment, I said, it's time
to make a change.
A change.
How did you get to running? Because running is not a go-to for a lot of people. A lot of people say, ooh, I'll do anything but run. And where did that love come from? And I'm a fellow runner, so obviously I understand it, but let's share that with our audience.
Okay, so for me, I was a cheerleader. I love tumbling. And although I'm not doing that now, it's still something that I marvel at, I love. And I decided once I saw myself, it was time to transform. And that's when I turned to, can I mention a product on
Sure.
Okay, Shanti. So Insanity had just really hit the market. And I thought, I'm going to do this. So I enlisted the help of a few of my friends, and we are all in different states, but we said, okay, we're going to hold each other accountable. We'll post every day on Facebook. And we said, we'll just press play. So we all did. It was 4 of us. We all did the whole thing, and it was tough, but my body transformed. And I felt so good. And all of us did, because we're all around the same age. And we all just continued to encourage one another. And there was one more thing that I really wanted to celebrate. I used to be a smoker. Now, you know this, but our listeners don't. And
that's a really hard thing to quit. And it's a really hard thing to do if you want to exercise. Well, I was just about killing myself. And it took my physician to tell me, he said, Miriam, look, I know that you're trying to cut back, but you are going to kill yourself if you keep exercising at this rate.
and smoking.
Right. Doesn't go together.
Doesn't go together, but I was one of those knuckleheads. So, I had an epiphany, and I tried everything I could, and then finally I just had to give it over.
And it worked.
And it worked. And so during this whole insanity thing.
Explain insanity because I don't really know what it's all about.
Oh my goodness. So Shanti is crazy. So it's really high impact and intensity workouts for 45 to 55 minutes. And he also had something called...
so you do it online. In other words,
it's DVDs.
I got you. Oh, okay.
And it's a calendar schedule. And it lets you know which DVDs you're supposed to be using. So you're not always doing lower body, and it's all body weight.
I gotcha.
But oh my goodness, when I tell you see the definition once you're finished. And during that, I started toying with the idea of running. And I said, well, maybe if I set a goal,
you could do it.
I can do it. So I said, next year will be 10 years that I'm smoke free. And I'm going to run the inaugural Rock and Roll Raleigh half marathon.
Yes, I ran that race. It was hot.
Yeah, it was very hot. But I had been training and running the areas. And then when they released the map, I said, oh, I run all of this already. So all the hills and everything.
I think I might have seen you during that race. Yeah. I think I did. I think we passed each other.
We caught each other.
Yeah.
A glimpse. That was when you were like smoking because you were flying by me.
Back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know how it goes after you run that first half.
You kind of get hooked.
You got hooked, and I am still running. So I'm coming up now. Next year will be 10 years running.
That's amazing. You know, one of the things you mentioned, you were talking about doing this with your friends, kind of as a group, and the support that women give each other and accountability when it comes to exercise. I see you doing that all the time with other people. I see you online. Why is it important for you to help other people find passion for running?
Well, first of all, it's inside of us. So for me, I had people who nudged me lovingly along in the form of Black Girls Run. I met some wonderful women that I'm still friends with today, and we're still encouraging each other to greatness. And I feel like I need to do the same thing, but I am a big encourage. That's who I am. It's within me. So it transitions from work. It's in my home life. It's in my spiritual life. And it's also in work life. But with women specifically, because, there's so many, like even television shows where women are tearing each other down. And I feel like we should be encouraging each other and, saying it's okay, because no one gets to their goal by themselves. Well, they say if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you go with people.
Absolutely.
And so that's the reason why I do it, because I feel like we can achieve great things together.
Absolutely. One of the things you said to me that really struck a chord when we were running recently was that you have vowed to run a mile a day. And that is such a doable thing if somebody wants to begin a life of running. And I said, you know what? January 1, I'm doing it. I just want to have a goal like that. And I do run long distance as well, but I like the thought of just making it part of your routine every single day.
Every single day you do something for yourself. And so today is day 313. So after this podcast, you're going to hit it. I'm going to hit it. And, I think that for women, again, because we do lose ourselves doing so many things for so many people. And it's not that they're bad things. And I'm not saying, I want you to feel guilty. This is not a guilt trip, but carve out some time for yourself.
Yeah. Reconnect.
Reconnect with yourself. And it may not be running. But whatever it is, carve out time, make an appointment with you, check in on yourself.
I've always said, when I do half marathons, and I've always said, what is your marathon? I mean, your marathon may be completely different than mine. It may be, something physical, climbing a mountain, or it may be writing a book. It may be, something to do with music. I mean, it could be anything, painting. one of the things that the theme of this podcast, Mimi, is transformation, and specifically transformation of women of a certain age. Because I think once we have that wisdom, we've walked over a lot of hot coals, and we have some life experience, I think that's when we really start to bloom and say, wow, what is life all about? What do I want to do? What's my legacy? Why do you think it's so important? And what is the secret, if you will, to being open to transformation after 50?
Well, I think I've been doing what I was called to do, but I also feel that for me, so I'm going to give you my definition and why I cling to the transition and transformation, because, you have to be willing to grow, to keep learning. And it's not to say that I have reached the pinnacle of journalism, but I also know that it's time for me to make a shift and do something else that I really feel will, light a fire under me. And then that fire will kind of catch to someone else because they'll see, okay, she's excited about something again. And, we are multidimensional beings, right? So you were on fire as a journalist, but that doesn't mean that you only can stand in front of a camera and make an impact. So for me, it's like, okay, I've always been behind the camera, but now I'm finding that I do have an actual voice.
Right, and you want to share it.
I want to share it.
What are your dreams? Anything you can share with us before we go?
Yes. So I do have a mentor who is helping to guide me because some opportunities just started falling into my lap and I had to pause and actually seek guidance from God because I felt like, okay, am I moving on my own? Am I doing this? And I want to make sure that what I do is impactful, that I, again, am making a difference and I'm doing it for me this time. So, yes, I am a chief elevating officer. That is what I will call myself.
Okay, I like that title.
I'm a chief elevating officer. And so now I am helping others brand themselves because it's basically what I do anyway, but I'm able to do it freely in speaking engagements and facilitating. So there will be some things coming out soon.
Well, I am excited to see what happens. And you know what? You are just such a lovely guest. So thank you so much. I mean, I've always known that about you, but thank you for sharing yourself and being vulnerable and being candid because that's what this show is all about. And I just really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you once again, and keep doing this because so many women have stories to tell.
Thanks so much for joining us today. This show has been a production of Stage Might Communications. It is researched, written, hosted, produced, and edited by me, Amanda Lamb. The music for this show was composed and played by Reginald Griffin. The opinions of my guests are their own. If you have any ideas for the show, please reach out to me on Facebook at Stage Might. Thanks for listening.